Welcome to USIP ISIP, a weekly podcast with Northern Lights Winery founder Doug Bell, exploring the experiences from leaders in business, social media, and family. Now here's this week's exceptional guest.
Welcome to USIP ISIP. We have Stephanie Deol here, the Associate Director of Marketing, Brand, and Creative. That's a mouthful for the College of New Caledonia and Prince George. Thank you so much for joining us today, Stephanie.
Thanks so much for having me. It is a mouthful. It barely fits on my business card.
Actually, that is very ironic because you are in communications and you are talking to people all the time. Now, there's old styles of talking to people such as business cards, and then there's the new social digital wave that we're on today in the podcast. So glad to have you on. I've been looking forward to this for a little while, having a chance to sit down with you. We've had a few times where we've been able to interact over the years, but certainly not in this type of environment. So thank you for coming on today. And I'm drinking some Ursa apple wine. It is early in the morning. You are drinking a little bit of water. That's totally fine. We are excited to get into the conversation. And as we talk today, I think the listeners are going to very much see what you represent in themselves. So you are an everyday person, but you've been very successful in your communications career, and you've done a lot of very interesting things over the last few years, such as traveling. And we just talked beforehand about how much that's changed and how we're excited to get back into that realm of the world. So before we cut into the traveling, why don't you tell us your origin story and where you grew up and what things were like when you were learning to get into communications?
Sure. Yeah. I appreciate that you said I'm just like an average person, because even, I am. And even when I get invitations to participate in things like this, my first response is like, are you sure? Like I'm really not that interesting. So hopefully some of the stuff I share today will resonate with some folks. I am originally, pretty much raised in Prince George. Our family relocated from the Okanagan, and this is home. It always has been home. It always will be home. And we're a Hart family. So Kelly Road girl, grew up on that side of town. And I feel like just kind of grew up in a typical 90s Prince George story. My dad worked for forestry. My mom, ended up going to the workforce when we were a little bit older, but was really fortunate to have a stay-at-home mom for a while back then. And, did really normal kind of nerdy things growing up, was like really involved with Girl Guides and student council. And eventually, I was one of those typical Prince George kids through high school that I just could not wait to leave Prince George. Had to be something so much better out there. And I studied at UNBC for a year and then went off to UVic to pursue my undergrad. In the 4 years that I was there, by the time I finished and came back, that changed from I can't wait to get out of Prince George and see you later, I'm never returning, to the, oh my God, it's the best place on earth. And I just cannot wait to move home. So grateful that I had some opportunities to return home at that time. And, that's kind of how my personal life brought me back here. I have 2 younger brothers, and my family all still lives in Prince George, which I just think is also the best thing. I studied and actually lived for a short time in Quebec City, which I'm not going to lie, rivals Prince. It's my favorite place on earth, but there's something so special about just the mix of everything we have here. The size of our city is, you have everything that you need, but nothing that you don't, or everything that typically comes with a larger center, the traffic and the busyness, and you don't have any of that. And we have so much beautiful green space, just everywhere. I don't think you talk to anyone that lives here that doesn't, enjoy something outdoors, whether that's kayaking or hiking or camping or hunting or fishing. And then the other piece is people and family, that at the end of the day, this place is special, but what makes it home more than anywhere else is that, we've all chosen to stay here and just raise families here and build a beautiful life on the gorgeous territory of the Great Lakes Tenay.
That's so true, and many may call you a small town girl, which is, I think, a very great compliment. And I'm in a very similar situation. Born in Kamloops, moved to Prince George, have been here a very long time. During your kind of youth, I'm going to say, although you're not that old, you got a chance to go to a lot of these larger cities, and then you recognize what you had in the smaller center of Prince George, and you came back. What were some of the experiences that you had in the larger centers that kind of you wanted to bring back to the smaller town when you did come?
One of the things I really loved about like Quebec City is like the culture and the history. And of course, I think, even Eastern Canada is just so like different compared to our lives in the West. When I think about living, in Victoria and the island was like home for 4 years. Certainly like the culture in the outdoors, but they just had also like such a great kind of thriving like nightlife and restaurants. I don't know if it's still the case, but I remember at the time it was like Victoria had more like restaurants and pubs, I think, like per capita than like anywhere else in Canada. And that's probably because it has so much tourism. But that's certainly, one of the things when I left Prince that I really missed, or really enjoyed about Victoria and just really wasn't here yet. But I feel really privileged in the way that when I came back and over the last decade especially, we've seen like the business community just really blossom in such a meaningful way that I don't know that I would like love this town in the same way if like those hadn't popped up. And I think of Northern Lights is a great example of one of those businesses that just as citizens we love to come and enjoy, like best patio in town right on the river. I, like Crossroads, I love Batula and they have like just the best drink menu. And I love when we have friends come from the bigger cities still and we take them to those places and their minds are just like blown that these incredible businesses are in Prince George. And they've just, I think, really contributed to making this a fun place for young people, not just for folks who are like settling down and want to raise a family and, go camping for the weekend. There's great places to go out and grab drinks and great food. And especially pre-pandemic, that we really saw that rise in like community pride and like those community events, seeing like Summerfest and, the Crossroads Street festivals and those things that at least in my lifetime, I don't ever really remember being a part of like living in Prince George. And I look forward to those coming back because I think that's just really made a really significant impact for everyone who lives here.
You bring up a really great point that Prince George has changed a lot as a community, certainly since I grew up. And most people from the Lower Mainland really have considered Prince George to be a very resource-based town. But it is a lot different now. There's a lot of education, there's services, and of course there's a lot of entrepreneurs and businesses and tourism operators now. What is that like growing up in that, and how does that make you feel when you're sharing this with other people?
I feel like such a sense of pride for our community. And I always certainly have. I remember like being at school on the island and folks would like find out that you're from Prince George and kind of give you that like, oh, like I'm sorry, like response. But really being able to talk about like all of those things, and I'm amazed by our entrepreneurship community here in Prince George. I am not that brave. I'm like, just way too scared for that, at least at this point. But I think it's really amazing, and I think one of the really great things about kind of referring back to like the size of the city and the people is that this community is big enough that there's certainly a great opportunity for businesses to really thrive and to differentiate themselves in the market. It's not it's not big enough that we have so many options that you still really have a unique opportunity to like stand out and build a really meaningful brand, and maybe even be like the leader in whatever your sector may be. And I don't think that folks in other like municipalities or larger centers get that same opportunity. And the other thing that I've really seen that's really beautiful about our business community is people's willingness to help other people. And, I was reading a story recently of there's another brewery popping up, a craft brewery in town. And, they were just sharing how like the business owners from like the other breweries in town were the ones who were like supporting them on this journey as they were getting started. And um, maybe you get that other places, but I think that people here just really want to see everyone succeed and really collectively want to see our community become like the best it can. And so really just do their part to make space and help set the stage and share their learnings so that I mean it is the city is big enough that there's like room for like multiple businesses. And so I just think that like that's a really special thing.
Yeah, I have experienced that so many times in my young business career. And one of the things that I do truly believe is that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so whether it was when the initial couple of breweries started developing, they came and saw what we were doing here, and we taught them everything we knew and told them everything we did wrong. And hopefully that helped. And we get a lot of other businesses and wineries that come by now and are saying, hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think? Would this work? What should we be worried about? Or what things didn't you think about when you started? And that was really interesting. But then the other component to it is that is because you have been given the opportunity, you have the responsibility. And just because there's another business open in Prince George doesn't take away from your opportunity. It really just enhances it because it creates a culture and enough density of this type of business that it attracts a larger group of people. And that's certainly what we're seeing. One of the reasons why there's such a crazy boom going on in construction in our area. Now, you are also a great communicator. And was there a point in your youth where you were growing up and you realized you had a passion for this?
I don't know that I had like a moment. I never like grew up thinking like I was going to work in marketing and communications. In fact, I didn't even know that it was like a field or something you could study, to be perfectly honest. I was thinking about, even though that I'm not an entrepreneur, just how special the people in this town are and how that's been a theme in my own path. I was really privileged to have some really amazing local mentors, and they honestly are the ones that really just like set me on this path. When I was at UVic and studying, I'd started working a summer job for the Y, and I was coordinating camp programs for a while. And a long story short, when I was getting ready to graduate, I got a call from our CEO at the time, Mark Miller, and he was kind of like, Steph, like, we know you're getting ready to graduate. I actually thought I was going to be a teacher. And, my family was really pro like studying something that had a really direct career path. So it was very much like, you should be a teacher, a pharmacist, a nurse, something where you like graduate school and it's just like clear as exactly what you're going to do. And I know you mentioned I'm not that old, but also like marketing was really up and coming still back then, especially like in a town this size. I remember, I think now how many people like don't actually understand what we do in marketing and communications. And, over a decade ago, that was so much more so. And at least now there's like all the Hallmark movies where, every main character is like some kind of marketing executive. So people like know that it's at least like a job. But so at the time, I was actually supposed to go into teaching. I had my spot, and that phone call really kind of just was a bit of a fork or a turning point in the way that it took me a long time still to decide what I wanted to do, whether I wanted to stay here at that point in time and take a full-time job with them, or whether I wanted to go back to UVic in the fall and start the teaching program. And I remember it was like April. We were getting ready. It was like exam period when I got that phone call. And I sat on that decision until it was like July 30th. That was like my final drop dead time to like pay my fees and make my decision for September start. And for me, I really admire like teachers and the work that they do. And I knew that, for me, it can be a really political job. And that wasn't something that I was really interested in. And I also knew that I would never like do that forever, that I was really passionate about positive change and education, but I always knew that I would like pursue a master's, go into administration, like kind of not be like in the classroom full time. And so ultimately having opportunities to like move right into leadership positions with the Y just felt like the right fit. Had you asked me even a year before that if that was what I thought I would be doing, I had like would have said no. Like I'm gonna be like back in UVic, like in teacher school. And through that journey, I worked full time there for I think about 8 years in a variety of different leadership roles. And again, it's the people and the mentors who really just helped me find my fit along the way. I started the closest thing to communications I was doing at the time was social media. My undergrad is in French and political science. And I'm pretty sure still that I like only was the social media girl because I was like the youngest girl on staff. So just, by that obviously meant that you were just good at social media because you were like young, and learned a lot. And I was so incredibly privileged to just have so many learning opportunities, both like leadership development opportunities. A highlight was being a part of our Canadian delegation for Y Canada and representing us at a like international conference in Bogota, Colombia, and doing months of leadership development with a cohort from across Canada in Toronto. And like that was really significant. I was like 22 when I started working with the Y and in those capacities. And so to have like an organization or a company just like really invest in me as a person like that was really meaningful. When I was talking to my friends that would be graduating and where they were at in their careers, I knew that I was just on a really special journey. And through that, I also just had a lot of leadership opportunities. I used to always think like I'd wake up some days and I'd be like, are they like, do they really want to trust me with this? I even think back to like when I was coordinating camps and we'd have like 100 kids lakeside and I was like 19 years old and I'm like, really, like they trust that like all these parents are going to like bring their kids and I'm going to lead this staff team. And like, we're like, not only just going to keep their kids alive, but make sure that they have a great time. And, but those opportunities just really set me up to like have opportunities like the one I have now at like a really young age. The other really significant piece of feedback I received was, so I mentioned that I knew I always wanted to pursue grad school. And I always anticipated that I would pursue like generic leadership master's degree. And one of my really amazing local mentors, and she works in communications, she was like, Stephanie, you need to specialize in something. And no disrespect to everyone out there with a leadership master's, grad school is hard and like kudos to you. But she just really shared the value of like being a master or a specialist in something specifically. And at that point, I had started working more like in communications and really kind of took that to heart. I stumbled into just more and more and more of that work. But the one thing that I really like learned is I kind of just like found my fit. And it, even though I didn't know it existed as a career path, the more I worked in it, the more it just combined everything I love to do. It is like engaging with people. It is telling stories. It is working with the media, which we have an amazing like media team locally. And that's another thing I just love about the size of this town is like, everyone personally. It's language and culture And and I actually didn't even think I liked data and research. I didn't take math 12 because I hated math so much. But after grad school, I was like, man, I actually really love research and data. And so being able to combine all of those things that I love into one field, I really found that like that was what I wanted to specialize in.
You talk a little bit about communications being very misunderstood as a profession. Can you tell the listeners what it is you do?
Sure, I'll try. We joke a lot in our office as well, even like in an internal team that works with these same departments every day, and folks just really, I think, not understanding what we do a lot of the time. And we joke that folks would be like, well, like, can we post it on Facebook? And so if you talk about social media or websites, then folks are kind of like, okay, like, sure, yeah, like, I get what you do. But now we lead like a whole team of people. We have a team of about 13 people at the college, and it really takes that many people. I dare say we could actually use a few more, but to do the work that we do. And communications is actually a really like wide field and made up of a number of pieces. One component is like public relations. And so that would be public relations or PR can get like a really bad spin. You see it in Hollywood, right? People have their publicists or the PR people, and they're trying to put like positive spins on things, but that's not actually like the case. Sure, sometimes, but really what PR is looking strategically at where you're at and where you want to go. And where that intersects with like your operations, your partnerships, it kind of brings all of the pieces that are happening in your organization together and making sure that you're telling the story along the way, so that it's not about like making up stories that aren't there. It's about using media and storytelling and partnerships to talk about the amazing work that's happening to build your brand and further your business. When we talk about branding, that's another really big piece of communications that folks typically think like a trademark or a logo. But when we talk about brand, we actually talk about like an experience. So I love giving an experience of like, Starbucks or Costco, somewhere that like everybody knows. And it's like you walk in the door and you have the same experience no matter where you go. You're in a Starbucks, not just because of the logo on the white cup, but because you walk in the door and you're going to get your like $6 coffee exactly how you want it. You're going to have the same options. The staff are going to be really friendly. They're going to be in green aprons. Typically, that you're going to get like your service within a certain amount of time. That when we're talking about brand, we are tying together the whole experience of brand and really helping organizations and communities understand that it's not like just your logo and your trademark. It's not just the colors. It's not just how that all fits together in your advertising and what that looks like for the digital billboard that you have going. It's actually like the language that you use. Yes, on your website and on your radio ads, in your podcast, in the questions you ask, but it's also in how you train your staff and how they show up for customers and how they believe that when they walk in the door, what they feel. I think it's a Jeff Bezos quote, but it's like your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And so if you think about you as a person or you as a business, it's like, what do you want people to say about you or describe you as? And all of those components that would feed into that, that's your brand. Advertising is a big piece of communication. Certainly, I think that's probably the one piece that people like think about. And marketing in itself is a beast, but we do a lot of like data-driven marketing. So that marketing isn't just advertising, but actually really understanding, your market and your demographic and your product so that you've got like the right product at the right place at the right time to the right people, and then putting that same message in front of them at the right time. For example, in our work now at the college, when we talk about like, ultimately, again, it's no secret, my job is to try and help us get students at CNC. And so, we talk a lot about like lead generation. And so we have a pool of of leads or prospects, but then not everyone is going to make that big decision to go to college at the exact time. So then how do we follow up our messaging with them, and how do we really understand them? The way we're going to follow up with someone who's 18 is probably, or at least should be, different than the way we're going to follow up with someone who's 45 and looking for a career change.
That's very true. And we've had a few guests on here recently that discussed marketing within their organizations, some of them very large organizations, some of them smaller. And all of these components have to come together in a very holistic way. So your strategy has to be very set. Now, when you're in an organization that is a public-facing organization that's very large, right, and has a lot of dynamics in terms of what messaging it wants to get across from different departments, right? There's so many different paths to a student's career, whether it's in trades or in education or in nursing. Then you also have the additional complexity of the political sphere that's trying to influence the post-secondary education system. How do you take all of these potential messages and wrap them up into a strategy to make sure that each message has its opportunity to be found, yet not so complex that people don't know what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And a lot of the work that I'm doing right now, and I think a lot of work that especially really large organizations struggle with, or organizations who haven't maybe yet made the decision to like invest in communications and really seen the importance of that in their growth strategy. And first and foremost, it comes back to the strategy, and that strategy should be aligning with like your strategic plan. So even if you're a small business and you're like, oh my God, like I don't have like a polished, 4-page strategic plan, you have one. Even if it's like, still just floating around in your brain, you certainly know like what you're doing for the next 5 years or where you want to be. And when you've established that, then like the communications, your strategy is to help you get there. And so everything that feeds into that has to help get to that goal. And if it doesn't, then typically it probably shouldn't be a part of that strategy, or, whether that's a communications or actually just like an operational or like strategic decision, like actually maybe shouldn't be something you should be pursuing at all. And there's always a huge like pool of priorities. I always say that like everyone always thinks their priority is the most important in the entire world. But the importance of having that strategy preset, the goal where you want to be, what are really some important benchmarks to get there, help you keep the path. And so even when the negative Nancy, or maybe it's even like the positive Polly, but like the really like squeaky wheel is like, hey, like, we need folks, this is important. It's like, okay, like I totally respect that this is important to you. And maybe even like, this is what we can do, but like, this is what's the most important piece right now. And this is where we're headed. And I've really found that I think because folks have a really hard time understanding like what we do, the more that we just like share that strategy and share what we're doing, like folks are okay with that. The challenge is with, I think a lot of corporate services, but like marketing and communications, is we kind of just like, it happens in the background, right? And nobody really knows it's even like happening until they feel like it's not happening, right? So as long as things are going good, you're selling wine, you've got students enrolling, like it's fine, nobody's worried about it. But as soon as enrollment drops or as soon as sales drop, then all of a sudden it's like, oh wait, where's that marketing team? Somebody's clearly not doing their job, like follow up with them. And so just positively sharing, like, here's the strategy, these are the pieces that we're working on, here's the outcomes, talking about that data, letting folks see that has been really helpful in them understanding and respecting like what needs to be the priority.
Yeah. And for many businesses, it's very subjective, right? When you talk about marketing. Now, there's a saying in marketing that if sales are going well, it's marketing. If sales are not going well, it's the weather, right? Like basically saying that we want to take all the credit, but we don't want to take all the blame. And it is so hard to identify what success looks like, because ultimately it is not known by the end consumer or user. The person who comes in the door doesn't recognize that they were there because of marketing. They recognize they were there because of a feeling you gave them. But that takes a long time and it's very subjective. So what are some of the strategies you enact to try and make sure that you stay on that path if you are confident that it is going to provide the right results over a longer period of time?
I think the most important piece is like data and tracking. What's not measured like doesn't get done. And it's funny that like you said that about marketing, because like in marketing, I feel like I always say we're like never thanked, always blamed, right? People are like really quiet, like I said, when things are going well. But then as soon as like the weather happens, it's 100% of marketing's fault. But really about that data. So setting like data-driven goals, things that you can track. You're right that like people come because they act on a feeling. And so when you're putting your like marketing and your advertising together, it's so important to understand that and also understand what's going on like psychologically for people. So when I used to work at the Y, and this is, I think actually really similar to the college, is that I think about the example of someone who is like going to come and join the gym. And at the Y, we're not selling gym memberships. Like we're selling a healthier life, right? A better tomorrow, a happier, healthier being. And so at the end of the day, a gym membership isn't something that somebody buys for the sake of buying it. Okay, like a lot of people do and like they never use it, but like ultimately you decide to buy it because you're deciding that you want to live a healthier life. And you think like that's just the tool that's going to help you do that. And so you need to appeal to like the heart. Everything you do needs to appeal to the heart, but back it up with like to the head. So we're going to give you a better life, but here's the tool that'll help you do it. By the way, you know, it's 50% off right now. And you're like, oh, your head is like, that's a great rational decision and a good time to buy it. But ultimately it's resonating with you because we just told you that that half off membership is actually going to live you a healthier life and make sure that you can play tag with your grandchildren, 30 years from now. It's the same with students where, at the end of the day, we're not selling you like a degree or a certificate or a program. We're selling you your dream career. We're selling you a higher paying job. We're selling you a better life. And so really working to make sure that you appeal in that way, but that you have like data-driven goals that you are setting and meeting and tracking. And you're not going to meet every goal. Like I think sometimes, that's a really important thing for people outside of marketing to really understand. And like, that's okay. But that you've tracked it and you're using that data, you're looking at like your click-through rate, you're looking at why people aren't engaging with something. And then you're using that data to reinforce whether that's like your next phase of a campaign, your next advertising, maybe you're switching like who that product is for, but also like really understanding your audience. And so we talk a lot about like personas in marketing. And, an example, like I'm thinking of like the winery, I'm just making an assumption, not looking at any of your data, but like your typical like audience or customer is probably like a 25 to like 55-year-old female, right?
You're bang on, actually. That is incredibly astute. Yeah.
And then you build her up from there. So lots of times we even give her a name. So it's like, let's call her Susie. And, so Susie's like 35. She's got 2 kids. She works a job and, full time. And Susie is really busy taking her kids to like childcare. But Susie loves to like have a patio pounder on the weekend. And so when you really like understand who it is that wants or should want your product, then everything you build is to appeal to Susie. That might mean that your winery hours actually have to like be open later because Susie doesn't finish picking up, her kids from childcare until 5:30. And then she has to take them home with her husband. And then she wants to like hit the patio with her girlfriends for the evening. It might mean that, in fact, Susie just wants to go home and put on her pajamas and doesn't want to hit the patio at all. And so what messaging do like you put together? Like, here, come pick up this like 6-pack of wine so you don't have to come, out of your house all the time and grab it. And we do that with students for different, like continuing education would be really different than folks coming out of high school. But really understanding like the personas and who your audience is, and then setting like data and benchmarks and goals to back that up.
I mean, it's so funny that you say that, and you've clearly identified our target audience for the Northern Lights Winery. We even call her Susie, so it's even funnier that you said that. But also, marketers and communications people get a really bad reputation for at the same time, because some people are considering that you're influencing their behavior, and other people consider that you're just kind of guiding them to a product that they would enjoy. How do you communicate ethically? And you've been a part of some organizations, of course, that is much easier to do, to make sure that you're truly believing in what you're selling, and also that you're communicating it in a way that is ethically going to make you feel good at night.
Yeah, I think, with any industry, ethics is so important. And for me, I think like it's a really it's a personal values piece. So you talked about like I've worked for organizations where that's like easier. That's intentional. I can't imagine like ever not working for an organization that I really like didn't believe in. I think that certainly there really is a fine line. However, if you like are ethically doing your job and focusing on a product that you believe in, then I believe that it is about like making people's lives better, and not about like influencing like their decision-making power. Certainly, like, yes, you want to persuade someone to like purchase whatever it is that you're selling. Ultimately, even if someone makes that purchase, if they are not happy with your product, they're not going to purchase it again. And so like that's actually the importance of like knowing your market. And so if you're building a product that appeals to your like personas and your target audience, then like really they're likely to like want that product because it's a product built for them. So I'm thinking, for example, like let's use the winery again, that I would fall into your target demographic. Well, I don't actually need a lot of influencing to like show up and buy the wine from Northern Lights. I might, in fact, I can think of like last summer you launched, I'm going to get the name wrong, but like the canned like spritzers.
Temptation, yeah. Currently out right now as we're talking, actually.
Like I'm still waiting for them because like I saw them, and yes, that influenced my decision making because I went out and like bought them all up. But I love that product, and like I'm happier because you made that product and I found it. If you think of like my dad who's in his 60s and like has worked a blue collar job in our town and is like not a wine drinker by any means, really no matter how much advertising you do, he's probably not ever going to show up and actually like buy the wine anyways, at least not for himself. Maybe he's going to show up and buy it for like my mom for a gift. And if he did, if you really somehow were able to convince him that like he could not live and his life would be better without your wine, I dare say he's going to drink it, as lovely as it is, and he's not going to purchase it again, right? And I think, for me, something that a lot of businesses do that I find really challenging is we just like want to be all things to all people. And I think I totally get why. Like especially if you're in, whether it's a service or a product, you want to build business, and you like build business by selling more product or services. And so how do you do that? But like adding more customers. But actually when we end up like getting people to purchase our product who aren't in the target audience, they're going to be unhappy with it. And that actually hurts your brand, because now my dad is out there being like, oh yeah, I had that wine from Northern Lights. It was awful. Nobody go buy it. And he might be telling that story to people who actually like would really love your wine, opposed to getting the wine in the hands of people who are going to love their wine, the Susies, and then go tell all of their girlfriends how great it is. And they all run down after work to sit on the patio too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Northern Lights has this issue all the time because we're a niche product. We have a fruit wine, right? So many people don't understand what fruit wines are, and we're really trying to develop a lot of knowledge around that. But selling to the unsellable is obviously a waste of time. Now, there are lots of brands out there that are trying to find their target audience, and they haven't been able to do that yet. What ways do you try and dive in to figure out who the product is right for so you're advertising to the right people?
I think the first piece is that market research. So anyone who is listening to this, I hope that this probably isn't the case, but you haven't actually yet started that business. You've done your market research first and established that there is an appetite for your product and that there's enough demand to sustain that and differentiate yourself in that market. That said, you can do that even after. And it's really about understanding what your value proposition is for that product and how that resonates. We're doing, really kind of similar work at the college with that right now, in the way that really understanding who our ideal student is. So who is already at the college that is having the best time of their life. They're getting good grades. It doesn't necessarily mean they're getting all A's, but they're doing well in their courses. They are making friends. They are learning. They love their instructors. They are coming out of college with a job offer, and they're out there saying CNC changed my life and this is so great. And so those are the people that you want to survey and find out what it is from them that they love about your product, because that builds your value proposition. And when you can say that, so when this isn't it, but for example, they're I love CNC because it has great instructors and small class sizes and it's affordable. And then when we can use that in our marketing and messaging, saying hey, this is what we can offer you, we're going to attract people who that appeals to. We don't want to attract the people who want to go to Harvard. You're probably not going to enjoy your experience at CNC if you have always dreamed about going to Harvard. But if you are someone who those three things appeal to, then you're going to come, you're going to have a great experience, and then you're also going to increase your net promoter score, because those people are going to have that great experience, leave, tell everyone else they had a great experience, and you actually build this cycle of providing a better experience and building your audience, because you're attracting the people who are going to have a good experience, right? For you, it'd be attracting the people who are going to love your fruit wines.
Mm-hmm. Now that makes total sense. So I want to step away from marketing for a minute, because I have a question that I've had to ask you since the first time I read about this. In 2018, you publicly stated 3 goals that you had in your life. 1 was to backpack Southeast Asia. 2 was to do a Lord of the Rings tour in New Zealand. And 3 was a country music cafe in Nashville. Have you achieved your goals?
I have not. Also, you get really great internet investigative skills for pulling that out. No, I actually completely forgot about that until you pulled it out. I did backpack Southeast Asia. My best friend and I went in 2019, and it was a fantastic trip. And we were getting ready to plan a couple other trips before the pandemic hit. I think so many other people. But we did manage to hit Australia right before the pandemic hit, which actually wasn't planned in the way that it wasn't somewhere I had identified that I wanted to go. But it emerged as an opportunity. So we went. And actually to come home early. So I woke up in Melbourne the day that Trudeau was on the news and was the borders are closing, Canadians come home. And our trip was cut short, but grateful that we got it in the literal very nick of time.
That's so neat. You are a big traveler. You've been to a lot of countries in the world, and you bring these experiences back to Prince George. Is that something you see yourself continuing to do now that the pandemic is ending?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when I tallied, I've been at 26 different countries, 39 times or something like that. So certainly have had a lot of opportunities. I just I love visiting different communities and cultures, and for me, it really grounds me. I think it's so easy, and I'm so guilty of getting caught up in feeling like we're the center of the universe, and as amazing as this town is, feeling like it's the center and everything that happens here is so important. And then you go somewhere else and it's just put into perspective, even like Canada as a whole and how small and I dare say even like insignificant sometimes our lives can really be in the grand scheme of everything that's going on. And for me, it's really important to be reminded of that. And we will always travel. I don't know where we're off to next. We've certainly been talking about doing like a girls' trip to Nashville. If there's any Nashville fans listening, talking about the show, I just really want to go to the Bluebird Cafe. But it will always be something that's really important. And I encourage other folks that if it's something they haven't done, and I know that the pandemic has, I think, just added a level of fear to traveling. But whether, it's like across the world or like across the province, that there's just something really important and grounding about remembering that our way isn't the only way. And for me, it really inspires me and motivates me that I don't just want to be on this earth and die. And I want to leave knowing that I made a positive impact, even if it is just in this small corner of the earth.
Yeah. And that is such a great message. And also from a communications and marketing and social digital world, the fact that somebody is probably listening to this in 2078 and hopefully a lot of these messages you're talking about today are going to impact them the same way that they are today. You're a great individual. What things do you have coming up that are exciting, and where can people follow you on your social channels if they'd like to learn more about you?
I have nothing coming up that is exciting. No, but seriously, I think for, maybe the first time in my life, I don't have the next step planned. I am just really happy about my career and serve on a number of community organizations. And so right now I'm just really happy to do those things and give back to our community in those capacities. And for folks who want to reach out, I always love clearly to talk about marketing and communications and nerd out about building brands or bettering your marketing, whether you're a business or an organization. And I live a pretty transparent social media life, apparently. So you can find me on Instagram or LinkedIn, and always happy to connect with folks.
Well, that's great. Well, we'll share those links in the show notes below. Thank you so much, Stephanie. You are a breath of fresh air. You have a tremendous amount of wisdom, and I can't wait to see where you go next. This has been another episode of You Sip, I Sip. I'm the host, Doug. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in the next show. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to You Sip, I Sip. Please hit the 5-star rating and leave us a review. If you'd like to learn more about Northern Lights Winery, text us at 604-670-4046 or visit us on social media at Northern Lights Winery.